Okay. Good afternoon. Thank y'all for being here. This is the Charleston Daily Mail editorial board meeting, and today we're interviewing candidates of state West Virginia House District 39, and so we will have the candidates introduce themselves shortly. This will go about an hour, and we'll start with Kelly Merritt, editorial page editor of the Charleston Daily Mail, and welcome. Appreciate y'all coming.
I'm Don Cirker, editorial writer.
Philip Miranda, the managing editor.
I'm Brad McElhenney, I'm the editor.
I'm Matt Murphy, I'm the local government reporter. Probably talked to both of you at different points.
And I didn't forget to say, if you introduce yourself, your party affiliation, and brief 2 or 3 minutes of why you're seeking this seat.
I'm Sally Shepard, and I'm a Democrat, and I live out Haines Branch, Sissonville, where I've lived for 40 years. With my husband Tony, we have 3 grown children and host our 3 grandgirls every chance we get. I believe I have a strong 40-year history of being a community involved person. I never hesitate to, when I see an opportunity to help improve my community. Starting the library back 40 years ago, I was the first president of the Sissonville Village Association. Then got involved in statewide Let's Stop Out-of-State Trash and manage around, and was the worked on the legislation that created solid waste authorities because I wanted local involvement. I believed in that, and so I was honored to be the first chairperson of the Canal County Solid Waste Authority and built the Slack Street Recycling Center, which was a huge undertaking, and very proud that I could do that, and I could not have done any of that with just myself. It had to be collaborative, and I knew how to work with people. And when I was asked to run for this seat, I said, no, I just want to work at the local level to get things to happen. And then I looked at the new single delegate district and said, oh my gosh, that is my community, and I think I can bring good reason to the legislature. I know how I worked on 2 pieces of legislation and took it through the session. One got passed in a single year, the other just died at the bell, and so I do know the legislative process. And I know that the rest of the year, being the delegate, I feel that I can have more ability to make good things happen for Sissonville. And I know my community, and even if it's working in the barns at Camp Virgil Tate to get ready for the Farm Bureau Horse Show. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about all the issues in the district.
I'm Delegate Ron Walters. I've served the Sissonville area for more than 20 years. I'm grateful for their support, and held over 40 town meetings in the Sissonville area during that time period to stay in touch with the community development in the area. Over the years, we've had a good bit of success with that community development. The road's been widened out in Sissonville. Sidewalks have been added. The first middle school built between Charleston and Huntington in the last 20 years was built in Sissonville. It was a result of the middle school being in a floodplain, and certainly needed to be built, and it was an important development. Also worked on the closing of Bonham Elementary School and the expansion of Flynn to accommodate Bonham, because Bonham also sat in a dangerous floodplain, and the only escape for those students was up to the roof or up a long corridor steps to get to the highway. In addition to that, we've had a new library built in the area, and we've supported it over time. We've supported the local high schools. So all that's been my community service for the Sissonville area. Additionally, we pay attention to the roads, make sure the ditches are pulled, and I've served on finance for 12 years during my legislative service, and constantly aware of the situation in Sissonville with the new fire department and how they needed funding, and we worked on that funding, were able to obtain that funding. I've introduced a number of bills over the year that have been very successful, eliminating taxes on people that make virtually no income or low income, and got that successfully passed. I've worked with different energy bills that have come along to help the mining communities. I've also worked with healthcare issues because my business is an insurance agency and we are involved in healthcare and settlements. In addition to that, my wife and I have 3 sons. I'm fortunate enough to have one son that's a state senator, and my sons are well educated, and I'm so lucky to have them here in West Virginia. I can't tell you how excited I am about them being here and working with me.
Sally, you said something that interested me during your description of your candidacy, and then I thought about Ron. Ron, were you with the somewhat apocalyptic sounding 4 Horsemen at one point?
I was.
And that group was known for its work together.
That's correct.
And you talked, I thought I heard enthusiasm in your voice for the single member district, which you don't usually get from Democratic candidates.
We created it.
And so I wondered if either of you has a different view from normal about the single member district issue.
Well, I thought you had voted against the single member district, but I just believe in representing an area that I feel close to and understand, and that person. I know when I was the president of the Sissonville Village Association many years ago. I joked about how I was like the mayor of Sissonville without the government, without having to have a formal government, and I feel this way about being the delegate, that it would be a person that people can turn to. They know that one person takes responsibility for making sure that, say, the churches that are doing so much for our community are given the assistance they need to do that outreach. Or, say when the fire department, when you have one delegate, you have more responsibility, and I think it's clear for people, the citizens, to know who to go to and who to call.
Let me give you a history of the district. It was originally set up as the 32nd district. It had 4 delegates. It ran from St. Albans all the way to Clinton, down to Pinch. Then in redistricting, the 7-member Democrats said this is the area you're going to have. They took St. Albans and then gave us Nitro through, again, Clinton and then Pinch. This last time around, they said, okay, here's your area that includes 5 precincts in Putnam County. And we went to the speaker and said we wanted to create single-member districts. We asked for that. They opposed that. The Democrat members from the 7-member district opposed it. And the speaker, to his credit, said, look, this is the area you gave them. What do you care what they do with it? So we created the single-member districts. And all along I've supported single-member districts. Single-member districts make you more accountable. Single-member districts hold you to a higher standard. Single-member districts give those people a voice, a specific voice to go through to get things done. I've welcomed single-member districts. I'd like to see the whole state in single-member districts.
Some of the Democrats who've been in who represent districts that are still bigger than 1, they're now 4 or 5-member districts, have said, well, we work together. We operate as a team.
We did
that. You do that anyway?
We did that. I still do a lot of work with Tim Armstead. I still do a lot of work with Patrick Lane. I still work with the other members of the district in Kanawha County, particularly on issues like the ambulance authority that affects the whole county, or the libraries that affect the whole county, or any number of things that are out there. But then when I have specific things that are unique to my area, I have to focus on those also. But and we share some unique areas. We cross the river over by the airport down to the left turn that heads up to the National Guard, and so you have to pay attention to airport issues, which you have to talk to all the delegates in Kanawha County about. You have to pay attention
How do you campaign at an airport?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Somebody has to have it.
All right. There are only about 10 houses over there. But regardless, take, for example, Nitro. Nitro is literally right next door to Cross Lanes. And some of the things that have to be done on Nitro, you have to be supportive of. And vice versa, because Cross Lanes Elementary School, we have to get support from each other. Same thing happens on the Elk River. When you're looking at the community center there, you try to help them out. So we do work together and do stay in touch on things.
Another of the concerns about single member districts that some people have raised is, well, you get in and the incumbent never gets out. You're obviously facing an incumbent who serves this. How long? 93?
20 years.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's
I mean,
why
is there any of that
I need this
feeling?
opportunity.
Is it tough to go up against somebody who's been?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yes. I mean, you know, and when you are on the finance committee, you're able to, you know, make sure that monies come out to your area, and that with that comes some gratitude, or even though it is the public money. But, you know, I have to convince them that I would be working on this 12 months a year, and would, you know, do it collaboratively, and it wouldn't just be legislative monies. I would look for the resources, you know, other resources.
I keep asking all the questions. You guys want to ask them?
I have.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Shepherd, I've been in the state 33 years, and I've seen the shift from the Democratic Party to almost, looks like the Republicans have a good shot at taking over and electing their first senator since 1956. What happened to the Democratic Party? How'd you lose touch with the voters?
Gosh, well, I'm hoping that that's not totally true, you know, in my case. And it's interesting, as I go door to door, because I'm a frugal farmer, so I'm not putting $30,000 into the, you know, TV commercials, etc. And so I've been going door to door, and with a little bit of trepidation that, gosh, you know, I've been told things are more conservative and more, you know, more Republican and less Democrat, and I have to tell you, it's every door I've knocked on, it's just people have been very. Well, first of all, they love to have someone come and ask them. And one person said, I remember when Bob Wise came by my door, knocked on my door. But I've been just very encouraged, and something I consider, because I'm a Democrat, a Democrat compassion for, hey, the economy is tough and we need to take, you know, and they worry about other people, and there's compassion, and I'm not saying that Republicans aren't compassionate.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up a Republican. You know, my father, I remember when in Virginia, when a car came up and some men got out in their dark suits, and it was the John Birch Society asking my father to run for governor. So I grew up in a very Republican family. So I do see the trend, but I didn't feel it in my district, and I think I'm a Democrat. Think I'm a positive person, and I'm very much, if there's a crisis, look for the opportunity. And so I'm not trying to paint Republicans as the dark side, but I'm a Democrat because I you know, think that, you know, we can pull together and make good things happen, even when and concentrate on being proactive. It's not a good answer, but I mean, it's.
Same question, or you?
Delegate Walters, you're seeking your 12th term.
Yes.
What happened to term limits?
Nothing happened to term limits. The bureaucrats just didn't join in, because if you're going to have term limits, you got to limit the bureaucrat too, or else they take over the government. The term limits never actually passed in West Virginia. It just was something that didn't happen. So you know, I entered this originally back in '93 seeking a job.
Mhm.
If it doesn't work out, I'll leave.
It's been
this
24
head
years
up and-
or 22 years.
Right. The bill's been introduced a number of times, and it just doesn't go anywhere in a Democratic-controlled legislature.
That's not leading by example, though.
It's not leading by example. I could say that Jay Nesbitt did that, and Steve Harrison did that, and of course, my good friend Dick Henderson died in office. So,
Finish the thought that you were saying. I don't remember how we started, but
If the Republicans take over.
That's fine. I'm done.
no, but you know what you were.
the thought about what happened with the Democratic Party in West Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, my thought is simply this. I mean, we keep spiraling in a down spiral, and we have to make major changes. That's going to step on some people's toes. The EPA and the administration has made this ground zero for the environmental attack on a protest and fighting against coal and coal power plants. That doesn't help the Democratic Party any. It doesn't help them when they get to the legislature and don't act to try to stop the EPA, because there are things we can do. Okay, I mean, in this new regulation, the EPA kind of thought it out. They said, if you ignore it, we're going to write it for you. If you write something up, we're going to look at it and see if it's okay. And it means big trouble for West Virginia. But what the EPA's forgotten, we are the grid. We're the producer. We're punished as a producer. We're not punished as a user. The users aren't getting punished. And there's no method there. I mean, there are some social issues that the Democratic Party have left West Virginians behind on. There are fiscal issues and tax cut issues, and you can't continue to raise taxes and grow a government, and all those people are concerned about it. And I think that's why you're seeing the shift to more conservative thinking in West Virginia. And it's not necessarily that they're becoming Republicans. They're becoming more independent, I think, at a quicker rate than they are Republican. But they're maintaining what West Virginia's always been: socially conservative, fiscally populist, and that's what they're doing.
Okay. This year, to the surprise of many people, there was a restriction proposed or bill passed on restricting the abortion to 20 weeks. Now, the governor vetoed it, and for some crazy reason, he can't session to next year to override the veto, which I don't understand, but that's what they're saying. Will you vote, if elected or re-elected, will you vote to override the veto or not?
No, I wouldn't vote to override the veto, and because I don't think it would pass constitution. I mean, I think it would be overruled. And I think it's an example of where we have so much energy and time spent on an issue that it really wasn't resolving an issue because it wasn't going to pass legal muster. So I would love to see the legislature spend more time on things that it can do, say on the economy, or and less on things that get people very, very excited and very angry and very polarized. But I don't see that accomplished anything for the amount of time that was spent on it, and wish that we could concentrate on more on legislation that actually can accomplish some things.
I voted for that bill, and I also signed a letter asking the governor to, or asking for a session for it to be overrode. That issue is on pain sensitive. That's when the child can feel pain. or what some people call late-term abortions. I do not support late-term abortions. I have never supported late-term abortions and will not support late-term abortions in the future.
And I'm seeing here,
Dominic.
I'm a Will Rogers type guy that all I know is what I read in the papers. And I've been reading this paper and local papers for quite a long time now, and just relatively new to the actual writing in this newspaper. But so I followed both of your careers to an extent because you've both been in the news over the years, and I don't recall any negative issue with either one of you, really. I mean, I see two people that like to serve, that want to make a contribution to the community. You know, I'm sitting here thinking I see two good candidates for House of Delegates, and thinking this is what the founding fathers had in mind when they created a democracy: good people running for election. That's great. I love. It's not every race we're seeing this issue, this positive issue. Believe me. So, but tell me, you know, what are the differences between?
Sal, you want to go ahead?
Maybe it has to do with my nature, which is why I'm a Democrat. I think I'm very proactive. I think when, as I said before, when there's crisis, I like to see opportunity. Instead of, I grew up in the Chesapeake Bay and on a very big farm, and I remember when it was shut down because it was a big chicken farm, and we were right on the Chesapeake Bay.
Your farmer shut down?
We had a big operation, and one huge aspect of it was curtailed because it was polluting, and it was there was other industry right up the creek who were fishermen, and so my interest in finding proactive ways to deal, for instance, with our energy crisis, with coal. In my district, we have lots of forest. In West Virginia, we're 70% forest, and I see that as an opportunity. Obviously, the wood industry in itself, but also in the fact that trees sequester carbon. They bring carbon down. I've, in the past couple of years, been encouraging my fellow farmers and woodlot owners to get woodlot management plans. I have a plan, and my neighbors and and they're in the line, signed up to get woodlot management plans with the idea that a healthier forest is one that the more the trees grow, the more they sequester carbon. But if we go one step farther and be certified as in this management, we can get carbon offset credits per acre. In other words, be paid per acre to have healthy forests. So that's that's to me is the no-brainer I like to work for. I like to, and we're going to have. I've had a forester from Kentucky, where this program is, come. This was 3 years ago to talk about this. Now, if monies can be brought to West Virginia from outside, just for having well-managed forests, which does not mean don't cut, because a part of my management plan was to clear cut a 3-acre meadow. So it has nothing to do with preserving a woodlot. It's managing the woodlot for better water, wildlife, and a healthier stand, which means not having more vigorous growth by doing thinnings, and that's kind of how I like to just try to make good things happen, and pick up the phone when I see that there's something that can be done. With our churches, as I said, our churches are just filling so many of the gaps And I have spoken with the manager of the Tyler Cross Lanes. It's an agency that helps with delivering foodstuffs and has a pantry, and have scheduled where I will go with him to see, how does that serve, because that's part of the district, but most of Cross Lanes is not. But is that something we need in Sissonville? Because one of the churches, Aldersgate, is just doing so much. And, finding out where the needs are, and I just see that I'm a person that will, just work year round. The legislature will be one part of it, and I will go every day to the legislature, and Ron, you must have had something else going on, because I know the Farm Bureau friend of mine. I'm on the Farm Bureau, and he said, well, when we were at the legislature, I noticed, Mr. Walters wasn't there, and someone else said that you had missed the minimum wage vote, which I think is very important to my district, and someone said that you missed over a fifth of the session, and and I just know that when I decide to do something, I will be there. I know when I was running the recycling, I was there 7 days a week, often from 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night when we shift, the early shift with the late shift. So I'm not saying Ron doesn't have a lot of energy, but I'm someone that I think my record proves when I take on a project, I see it through very, very diligently.
Let me address a few of those. Unfortunately, my mother is 85, and we moved her out of our house this year. It happened during the session, and I missed several days having to hop on the plane and fly up there, assist with that move and clean up the house and get it back ready to put back on the market. So I missed some time, and for that I don't apologize. My mother took care of me and raised me. I owe it to take care of her in her senior years. I've always been supported by business, Chamber of Commerce, the Charleston Area Alliance, always been supported by West Virginians for Life. We differ on that issue. I support coal and coal-fired power plants, and we'll work to try to curb whatever the EPA is doing every day. We need to make sure that only the Public Service Commission has the ability to shut down a power plant and have it torn down, or otherwise we'll never get that facility back. We don't get it. The EPA doesn't give you any credit for the fact that 70% plus of your landscape is covered with trees, and the average tree produces enough oxygen for 2 people. I mean, you think of the number of trees in West Virginia, we're producing more oxygen than the trees, than CO2. The issue is simple. We need to make sure that if our DEP is going to comply with that regulation, that we do cuts across the board. That way we keep miners working. That way we keep coal moving. That way we protect the infrastructure, because someone's going to raise the issue about interstate commerce. You get around interstate commerce by protecting your infrastructure. And you have to be able to maintain it, because we are the beginning of the grid. The grid goes east. Northern Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Delaware, New Jersey, and eastern Pennsylvania. And I'm firmly of the belief that if we have to cut power production across the board, it ought to come off the end of that grid and turn those people into our allies and not our enemies. So, I mean, there's a lot of difference. I support coal. My opponent has been down and protested against coal and mine coal. And I've, over the years, worked with the natural gas industry. I support our gas industry. We've had a disaster out there with a miraculous response. That community center that was developed by Aldersgate Church in the area has a great community center that provided shelter, housing during the derecho, during Hurricane Sandy, We helped them get emergency food out in that area. We took care of situations, and altogether the area is a conservative area, and I think I'll do well there.
Following up on the infrastructure, Delegate Walters, on highway funding, our friends at Wallet Hub say that we are the second lowest in expenditures per mile. We have the highest traffic fatality rate. And I don't think it takes much stretch of imagination to say we have to spend more money on roads.
Right.
How do we get that money?
Well, several ways. Number one, revenues, by the way, and you can check it, the State House is up 25 million this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from the road taxes and fuel taxes, things of that area that support roads. What we have been doing is every time now that we repave road, we're expanding that road to make it safer, make those lanes wider.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's been a process that Highways has been going through now for about 6 years.
How do we get the roads paved and built? You know, over in Putnam County, we need Route 35, Route 35 completed.
In Putnam County, you do need Route 35 completed. And there are several proposals on the table. One, the electric cars and the alternate use cars to charge a fee equivalent to what the gas tax would be based on their amount. And you could do that by averaging. Another methodology by which to get funding for that particular area is a public-private business venture, and with a short-term toll on that.
They said no to tolls.
And they've said no to tolls. You're right.
Vehemently.
Is there such thing as short-term?
We wound up with a couple
There's
of
no such
delegates to
thing as a
Mason.
short-term toll,
Like a
because I've
temporary
tried to
tax.
take a toll off this road a couple times, and we actually tried to take it as you're coming back into West Virginia to say, welcome back, we got rid of one toll gate. So, I mean,
Okay, those are some ideas. Mrs. Shepherd, what are your ideas on improving highway funding?
Gosh, I haven't had the privilege to be on the financial committee and in the legislature to be, having all the proposals presented. In that I have I for the past probably 10 years have run on biodiesel, made from waste vegetable oil. I am allowed a certain number of miles without, because I don't pay tax if you don't buy gas. And I want to pay the tax to help the roads. But I think the idea of, as we get more electric cars, electric cars use the roads, so I'm for paying for better roads. I think the fluctuating prices, there was one idea a number of years ago about just keeping it at a one price, and then if it went below that, whatever is being paid would go into a fund. In other words, people could budget if they knew what their fuel was going to cost, and it wouldn't cause the frenzy that's being caused, when things go up and down 3 or 5 cents. But that's an idea. But we have to, particularly now when the interest rates are low. Now's the time to invest in some new roads. 35. We just have to make the hard choices, and if we're no tax, we've got to, and I know investment is not a popular word, but if it's infrastructure, it does take investment.
We asked this question a few weeks ago to a different group, but it didn't work out very well because nobody seemed to understand what we were asking. But is Tri-State Racetrack in your district, or is it just right next
it
door?
is not in the district.
Okay. Well, close enough.
It's close enough.
Probably in the legislature. You might have
It's
to-
about 3 miles.
Okay. The question we asked then was, there's been an issue when casino gambling was legalized in West Virginia. One way it was defined was with horse racing or dog racing. now it appears that the casino revenue is outstripping the racing revenue.
Always has.
And meanwhile, there's been more and more criticism, it seems, over the health of the animals. Is it time to define where gambling can be in West Virginia in the new way, or does that definition need to remain just to sort of limit the locations?
Well,
Greenbrier obviously has gambling, but it's its own thing.
You're talking about racinos,
Yeah,
in
right.
essence. And there has been some issues on the health of the animals. I grew up in Charlestown, actually ponied horses early at 4:30 in the morning for my grandfather. We had a horse farm and grain farm, and one of the jobs once you got to a certain age and a certain size was to go work with the horses. But it's a two-edged sword here. One, I think the animals should be taken care of because the purses are better, the revenue is better for the tracks, and we've seen the purses go up. And at Charlestown, we've seen them go up at the dog tracks. As a matter of fact, Charlestown is one of the better tracks to run at in the United States. And the West Virginia Derby is held in the Northern Panhandle, and it pays out $700,000, which is a pretty good sized payout for a Derby. And there are other opportunities here. I mean, there are other opportunities, other resorts that, probably could be considered. There are, if you think about it, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland all have their own gambling and they're competing with us. What's going on down the area? You got Virginia and North Carolina. They don't have horse racing there, or they don't have gaming to a certain extent. They do have a lottery system, I think. So there are some opportunities, but a lot of that ends up with a local vote. And of course, we saw that when Charlestown originally turned down, the table games or video lottery machines or whatever. But anyway, I think there are other opportunities for the state. I think there are other economic opportunities in the chemical industry for the gas production. I think there's opportunities with coal. Electrify our railroads and we'll burn more coal than you can imagine.
Interesting. We might have crossed paths back then because I was an exercise girl on a horse farm and got to go up and break them out of the gate and at Charlestown, and that was quite an experience. But I can't say I'm a real fan of the industry now. And I think I think if you're having a gambling, a casino, a destination place, I think the time of requiring that there be dog racing or horses when other states have them so close that don't have those requirements. I do like that it's a destination as opposed to the gambling that's on every street corner. So I would I much favor a tri-state than the Annies and the
Mimis and
Mimis and
Jolos
that are
or whatever
just grabbing people's hands.
We haven't talked about education yet. Obviously, we're looking at a loss of West Virginia's projecting a loss of population, and I understand that we need more college graduates in order to fill the workforce needs, and we're not going to get that just with the loss of population necessarily. And what can we do to improve education in the state of West Virginia? Ron?
You want me to start?
Sure.
I think the first thing is jobs. But, we have some real unique opportunities here over the next 20 years. And, we have a budgeting natural gas and wet gas system. Wet gas is your basic elements for chemical production. Those crackers ought to be here. And those those chemical plants that can produce from those crackers ought to be here. And I'm excited the pipeline's going east to supply natural gas in that direction. But the educational system that we have, you know, I offered an amendment on the education reform bill that was going to take 3 high schools in each congressional district, 3 middle schools, and 3 elementary schools. The idea was to put computers, and I'm talking about handheld computers, into those schools. Download those textbooks. We know that if you download the textbooks, you save on average 25% of the cost of books. We know that. Florida did it, and they're saving money. But I also think there's a unique opportunity by breaking those down, and we're starting to see Raleigh County do this. We're starting to see some of it in Kanawha County. You know, we depend on the parents to work with the student when they get home to do the homework. You know, my son, I'm pretty good at math, but took some trigonometry and calculus classes that I had a little bit of trouble with, okay? So what I'm thinking is, in some instances, we can reverse the classroom. Do the lecture and download it into the computer and the practice questions. Have the student be able at their house to view that lecture, rerun it if they miss something, if they miss a practice question, rerun it so they get it. But when they come back into the classroom, do the homework there so that the teacher can be one-on-one with the student at the homework. This way, I mean, we can it's been used in the Khan Academy. It's a free service. Bill Gates funded it. And it's being, MIT professors teach the classes. I mean, but we can also do that with our educational system. We got to rethink the purpose of how that learning can occur. And the more one-on-one concentration you can give to a student in assisting with that homework or talking to them about something they didn't understand in that downloaded lecture, I think the better the system can be overall. I think we need to pay our professional teachers an adequate pay. I think that you know, we've gone a lot of steps in West Virginia. We've created a rainy day fund. I was there. We funded the pensions. I was there. We've put them on a funding schedule. We took care of the OPEB obligation. We're the only state to do that. I mean, we've come a long way. The future is all ours. Now we've got to develop the jobs, the industry, and the power. I mean, we're an energy state. Let's produce the power and send it out. But let's bring other industries here, because I'll tell you, New Jersey and Delaware are at the end of the grid. If Delaware gets 54% of its power from us. They're with New York fighting us. Okay? If they lose that power, where do you think those businesses are going to locate? Where they can be guaranteed power. And we can guarantee power here. And we can have the jobs here.
I first of all believe that education can start sooner. I really love the idea of the pre-K and letting kids because while my youngest child Lyda is mentoring, her job is mentoring teens in Domingo and Logan counties, and when her daughter Lucia was born 2 years and 3 months ago, I said, well, while you're taking care of other people's children, and I will take care of yours while you're doing that. And I raised 3 children before that, but I just somehow with this grandchild, I'm just amazed at just the capacity, you know, to learn at such an early age, and I, in the process of, you know, campaigning and going door to door, I've run into so many grandparents that are doing what I'm doing, but some are doing it because they have to, and just because the economics, or because their children are there's a lot of there's a lot of dysfunction, either through lack of employment or drugs, and a lot of grandparents have stepped into, as have the churches. And I see that earlier childhood education in a good school setting, and then farther, I think that we need to spend much more on the vocational and the so that not everyone feels that they've got to go to WVU for liberal arts, that they can find what they want to do and what skills they need and do workforce training, get some indications earlier on of a trade. And we need to honor trades again. I think we've lost that because in West Virginia, I think we just have people that have a great work ethic, and we need to salute that and accommodate that. And I think the vocational and technical schools really have a huge part they can play there. I know 5 years ago I was interested in all the veterans coming back and needing work, and at the same time we have this food that needs to be grown. Why are we we spend what I used to say it all the time, $9 billion for food. Why aren't we growing it here, and why can't that be some of the jobs? And I had a great conversation with one of the professors, Presser, at the Votech, that said that they could develop the curricula for farm training, how to grow food. But it's not just how to grow the food, it's how to distribute it, how to process it, so there are a lot of jobs involved in that. And I talked to the higher education, and he said, in asking, can that not be the training where the GI, the veterans can pay for that education? And he said, absolutely. In World War II, that was the GI Bill where, soldiers came back to the farm. So that was just interesting to me that here was an opportunity to get some of those billions of dollars that go to, veteran training, and they could come back here, have the local schools be certified. And he said it could very well be done. And in putting going back a couple of generations, say, this hard work with your hands is good. And I guess now there are even some studies that say that when you have your hands in the soil, there's some healthful benefit. But putting some more emphasis on it's good to have a trade, and to because I think West Virginia has and the workforce training needs to be developed where you're working while you're being trained and matching that with employers. So I think those are, but I agree with Ron that, oh my gosh, there's Khan Academy, bringing, using the technology to bring the learning, and I think teachers are they want to do. They're getting more loaded on them, and if they could be put with those resources to where they can use those resources rather than and have that as that high caliber to help them in the delivery.
I kind of had a question for, I guess, both of you too. And you, Ron, because you talked about, like the energy industry and that sort of thing in the state. At the same time, we also had a major environmental disaster here in January.
Yep.
So how do you balance, and for both of you, how do you balance, like you said, with accommodating those industries with looking out for the state's environment also?
Well, certainly, you have to remember West Virginia American Water has bought up a number of small water systems over the years, but shut down the intake valves. Okay, and they had an intake valve located below the plant where that was operated. Obviously, We didn't have sensors in place, which we do now under the new law. But we also need to make sure that our water systems have separate intake systems. You're not going to stop all industrial mishaps. You're just not. I mean, I think about down in Knight or Institute, they had that explosion down there a few years ago, and then eventually got rid of all the MIC that was produced down there. The last plant in the world, I think, that produced it. There is a balance. I mean, coal is much cleaner now that it's being burned. CO2 is a plant food, not a pollutant. Our trees produce more oxygen than we produce in CO2. And I don't think we get any credit for how much cleaner our streams were. When I was a kid, I remember you'd go outside and there was soot on the car. You talk about particulates. We had particulates everywhere as far as coming down. I think the environment is so much cleaner today. It's the cost of going that much further that really becomes the impediment. And so to maintain what we have, to keep this good quality of life, and to let technology move forward to improve it, I think we'll get there.
Well, being the positive person that I am, I think West Virginia just has, we have the balance, but that's also the challenge is the balance. We have the beauty and we have the energy and how to have both. I think it's a shame that we haven't been looking more to other sources of energy. My son has one of his job, one of the things that he's proud of is working to develop a community wind farm in Monroe County, and that's still being looked at. But we're and the hydro and geothermal is particularly as the energy return on investment. It's getting harder to get the energies out that we're used to dealing with, and you don't get as much a return. And there's a little bit of thought that maybe that's why the economy's not bouncing back, because it's taking more to get that energy out, and it's not as beneficial as it once was. And so why aren't we looking at these other energies that, particularly geothermal, that purportedly have a much better return on investment? I'm having a fundraiser on the Elk River Bar and Grill, which is on because I want people to come and look out and say, this is your water source. This is what you're going to drink in a couple of days, and you need to treasure that. It's a resource. Clean water is a resource in this state. When I first came to West Virginia, I very enthusiastically went to WVU because they were having a conference on water, but it was on water quantity. That there is just so much water, and there is, but what good is it if it's not clean? And I 3 years ago, when natural gas, I said, my gosh, report says that 1 in 3 buses being manufactured in the country are natural gas vehicles. I said, that's huge. And so that means that natural gas is going to be a huge boom, and there's going to be lots of money made on gas. And I said, that much money, that means they can afford to do it right? And, I think, and that could be where the workforce training comes. When you have workers that are working in the industry, have the training that says. I was going door to door out to Long Meadow. I was talking to someone that was, he said, there's someone's doing some fracking near here, and I know the company that's doing it, and I work for that company, and I'm not so sure they're going to do it that carefully. And we need to know that every company that's drilling is doing it carefully, because the leak is a good example of if every stream is an intake for something. It might not be for a city of 300,000, but it's an intake for, you know, and I thought it was interesting that on my farm, or riparian, where I worked with the government program to plant more trees and to fence out the livestock, so that I have the head of the hollow, and so I have the head of the stream, and the soil technician said, you know, this is where life begins, and you know, the government was willing to invest in this activity, planting trees, fencing out grazing, you know, to help us implement this. And at the same time, whole streams are, you know, are buried, or there just isn't that much protection. So I think it's interesting that one hand of the government can treat a head of a hollow stream, and at the same time not require that same care for other streams. The tech, we can do, if the money is to be made, there are more jobs in doing it well. And I think that's one of the investments.
Green energy takes a huge investment from government, a huge subsidy. Windmills kill birds by hundreds of thousands. I mean, and those plants that who is it, Google has out are frying birds as they come across the flame. I'm not so sure that West Virginia is going to like that very much. As a matter of fact, that's been one of our big issues: the subsidy for wind, the subsidy for alternative fuel, the subsidy for solar. I mean, there are places for those, but the subsidy is 20 times higher than it ever is for natural gas or coal. And Germany went away from all that. They were spending about $240,000 per person on subsidies to help, you know, those industries, and they moved it all to coal. So it is the cheapest source of energy, and no country in the world has ever turned their back on their primary source of energy. None. And this country can't do it either.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We're running slightly over time, so we're probably going to wrap it up.
When we get to Gazette, I'm